Hola, bom dia. Carl Munson here with the Good Morning Portugal live stream, YouTube channel and podcast. Looking forward to speaking to Adam Freeman on the show this morning from DaHungryCouple. He's in Porto, just hanging out in the green room for a moment. We're going to be talking about the future of work. And the context for that, of course, is like I've been saying, are we meerkats and aware of what's going on the horizon, or are we ostriches with the current economic situation brought about the pandemic? Brought about by the pandemic, and with our heads in the ground. So I'm looking forward to having a great chat. Just having a lovely chat before we came on air with Adam. And we've got a lovely mix of politics, future of work, and the future of Portugal, really, and how we might prepare ourselves with our livelihoods for the future in these uncertain times. But let's start off with some news and some weather for you. Weather first. Let's have a look at the digital seaweed, look at the principal parts of Portugal this morning, and to see how and if this beautiful weather will continue. And I know mainly, I was having a quick look earlier on, and we are free of rain for the next few days, but there is some fog in the post for certain parts of Portugal. And I think I'm going to have to come back to my weather because my browser is playing up. I like to pretend I've got a little bit of seaweed hanging up in the studio, so I can tell you about the weather. And see what's in my waters. But actually, I'm looking at our own weather site. Oh, it's behaving itself now. Actually, currently in the studio, we're looking at nearly 20 degrees, and just outside the window, the thermometer probe is measuring 17.3. And that'll be degrees C, obviously. And I know Adam will probably be thinking, what is he talking about? For those who like Fahrenheit, I'm sorry, I haven't got that in front of me at the moment. I'm a stickler for centigrade. Please do your own difficult translation of that. Okay, in Lisbon today, in Lisbon today, currently 18, a high of 26 to look forward to. A couple of cloudy days, actually, and then beautiful sunny weather for the rest of the week. And a nice looking weekend to come with highs of 27 degrees. Porto, currently 17, a little bit cloudy today and cloudy tomorrow, but a nice weekend, 22 and 23 respectively on Saturday and Sunday. Coimbra, currently 17 and overcast. 25 is the high to look forward to, but still a little bit cloudy tomorrow, but a nice clear weekend with highs of 26 and 28 on Saturday and Sunday. And down there in the south, 21 degrees, sunshine all the way, 26 to look forward to today. No cloud in the sky, 28, 29, 29, 29 throughout the rest of the few days coming up. So lovely full house of sunny days in Faro. And yeah, just quickly scrolling through, fog alerts in Vila Real. You need to be careful there, it would appear, in Vila Real for the next 3 days, actually. So fog alert, and in Guarda tomorrow it's going to be foggy as well. But hopefully that the sun will burn it off because the temperatures are looking good. I mean, in Guarda, for example, a good weekend to look forward to, highs of 24 and 27. And in Vila Real, where there's the prediction of fog for the next few days, still 28 degrees on Sunday, 32 degrees on Monday. So very comfortable, and not even any rain in the islands. The Azores currently 16, high of 21 to look forward to there. Madeira, high of 17 to look forward to today, currently 14 and sunny. Okay, so let's have a look, see who's here. And yes, hello everybody. Lovely. Turn my back for a moment to look at the weather, and here you all are. Morning all from a clear and sunny Castanheira da Pera. We are fog and cloud free again, so come and visit, says the unofficial ambassador of Castanheira da Pera. Bom dia from a cloudy eastern Algarve. I've been seeing some lovely pictures of your sunflower crops, and the baling has begun, hasn't it? So some of those lovely pictures of hay bales in those vast plains of the eastern Algarve there. Good. And how's it going with your search, Neil? Let us know. Send me a PM, mate. Joseph Marsh, bon dia from Fundao. Good day to you, folks. I don't know if that's automatically been translated as a bon dia from Mrs. M. Owen says, bon dia from a clear and sunny Villa de Rey. And it's spitting here. She's talking about the weather, not the children. It's awful here in Panella, says Eloise. It's going to get better. Don't worry, folks. I think these sort of foggy mornings give way to some nice sunshine, don't they? So hang on in there. And good morning, Carl, from a lovely morning in Algeciras. Yep, corroborating the fact that there is some lovely weather down there in the south of Portugal. So let's have a look at this context scene setter for the economics of Portugal going forward. Now, you know me, I've been saying for a while now, we need to get more self-sufficient, interdependent, and looking after each other more and thinking about our livelihoods. And I'm going to an article on a news site I don't usually use, Qatar. We go to Qatar for this to tell us about the economic situation in Portugal. It's the Peninsula, Qatar's daily newspaper. Extra points to you if you have ever lived in Qatar and have had this as your daily paper. But this is, I think, comes from Bloomberg originally, from João Lima, who it sounds like João may well be based in Portugal, of course. In northern Portugal, Tiago Carvalho is nervously counting the days until his business has to stand on its own 2 feet again. The restaurant owner in Braga, let me know who's been to Braga in our community here, home to the country's oldest cathedral, says revenue is less than a third of what it was before the coronavirus kept tourists away and confined locals to their homes. Even with lockdown restrictions largely rolled back, customers have stayed away, reflecting the slow pace of recovery across Europe. Unless that changes soon, Carvalho and thousands of others like him are in trouble. At the end of July, Portugal plans to stop its so-called simplified layoff program, which, like dozens of other similar government programs across Europe, has helped keep people in their jobs by paying part of the compensation for staff unable to work. The cliff edge for firms and workers in Portugal echoes those looming over much of Europe. In coming months, emergency programs will expire across the continent, creating the risk of a second wave hit to the economy. So not only a second wave of the virus, but second wave hit to the economy. The layoff measure has to continue, or else restaurants will have to dismiss workers, said Carvalho, 40, who runs 2 eateries in Braga and acts as a spokesman for a local group representing about 140 restaurants. One lunchtime last week, he served only 2 tables at one of his restaurants. And that's bad news, isn't it? Because, I mean, there's no atmosphere when it goes like that. And I think that's kind of like a downward spiral, potentially. After July, the Portuguese government plans to transition to other measures that include incentives for companies to keep jobs, but the impact is uncertain. Governments elsewhere are also aware of the danger. Many are tapering programs rather than shutting them off. So let's have a little bit of a look round Europe to see what's happening. Allianz SE, maybe is that Southern Europe of the arm of Allianz, warned in a report that this month, 9 million of those people face an elevated risk of becoming unemployed in 2021 because of the fiscal policy cliff. And this is referring to governments that have already pumped billions into support schemes and blown out their budgets in the process. At the center of this are furlough programs with more than 45 million workers protected during shutdown. This is a big deal, isn't it? And let's have a look at what's happening around Europe then. Chancellor Angela Merkel's government has vowed to spend whatever it takes to get the country growing again, including extending its renowned Kurzarbeit wage support program. After years of German budget surpluses, that's been welcomed by other nations, but the country is a rare exception in Europe. Most of its peers face stressed finances, and that puts pressure on European institutions to deflect the pressure. This I don't understand, but it sounds like a big number, as Donald Trump would say. The European Central Bank is keeping investor concerns about ballooning in national debt at bay with huge bond buying in the Eurozone, whatever that is. I mean, it's assumed we know what these things are, right? And then they chuck in a big number, and the European Union plans to back that up with a 750 billion euro fiscal package. Sounds impressive, but we'll see, won't we? And finally, from the president of the Portuguese Business Confederation, that'll be Antonio Saraiva, the need to guarantee we keep jobs isn't going to end in July, he wisely points out. The crisis doesn't end by decree, and consumption doesn't start by decree. And this, you can find more about this, obviously, as I've said there, peninsulaqatar.com or bloomberg.com for that sort of information. So are we meerkats? Are we ostriches? I think Adam, who I'm going to welcome now from DaHungryCouple, is here. Hello, Adam. Adam Freeman, good morning to you. How are you, sir?
Thanks for having me. I'm very well this morning. It's a touch cloudy here in Porto, but that's as to be expected.
It's going to clear up. It's going to clear up. I think you have a fine day ahead of you. Is that how it often starts?
Yeah, in the morning time, especially nearer to Foz do Douro, the fog will roll in, and it's not necessarily the most exciting way to start the day, but usually by 10:30, 11, it blows over. So fortunately, I'm not in that part of the city. That takes the brunt of the Atlantic wind.
Yes, amazing. You're a lucky man to be living in Porto.
I'm a lucky man to understand the concept of Celsius as well.
Yes.
I've been living outside the United States for 16 years. I had my expat anniversary just in November, December of 2019. 16 years outside,
Oh, wow. Okay. Truly a free man then, roaming the world. And
as it were.
yeah, and we're talking about the future of work here. And I've set a very grim scene there. But before we jump into all of that, the Hungry
Yeah.
Couple, what's the origin of the name of your work there, your company?
Okay, so my wife is from Hong Kong and I'm from the United States, and I was living and working in Malaysia on a government initiative there in education. And I went up to Hong Kong on a weekend trip, and I met my wife just randomly. And as time went by, I realized that she was an absolute foodie. And of course, that brought out the inner foodie inside of me. I valued sustainable sourcing and knowing where the food is coming from, the slow food movement, things like that. And excuse me. And so when it came down to it, I told her we were coming up with the idea for our social media handle,
Yeah.
and she would get hangry sometimes. So I started joking around with her, and I said, "Well, you're just a hangry wifey," and she's like, "And wifey, we do not use that term in my home, okay?"
Okay. Yeah.
But it was more of a joke, and I was like, "Oh, the hangry wifey," and she's like, "I love it," and she grabbed it. So I was like, "Well, who am I supposed to be? Am I the Hungry Hubs?" So we've got Hungry Wifey and we've got the Hungry Hubs, and together we form the Hungry Couple. Maybe you're hungry for food, maybe you're hungry for something else. Whatever it is, our conceptualization is to feed the hunger.
Fantastic. And yeah, I certainly get the vibe looking at your website, DaHungryCouple.com, right?
If you go to Hungry Wifey, you'll see all kind of food that she's doing. It's incredible. And yeah, Hong Kong food culture is one of those things that planted the seed a long time ago. And so food is an important part of every consideration of our day, actually.
Amazing. Yeah, my mother's from the Far East, and food is such an important part of the culture. And I do recognize the condition known as hangriness
Yes.
from and from myself. A lot of us fellas get like that as well, don't we, in that hyperglycemic moment? And of
It
course,
happens more of a headache for me than anything else, but yeah.
yeah, and you've come to the right place because, of course, food is such an essential part of Portuguese culture as well.
Absolutely. The gastronomy here.
Yeah, I came across you because we have this article which I'll put on the screen now. But you're looking at the future of work, and the indication seems to be that it's like from what I've just read, we have to get away from the corporate world, don't we, and the precariousness of all of that, and sort of plow our own furrow here and carve something out for ourselves work-wise, whether that be, I mean, we're a lot about happy homesteading here and, becoming more self-sufficient and that kind of carving out your niche. But obviously, we need to earn a crust and earn some money as well. And you've got a little bit of insight into that. Whilst I share the article, would you like to say a little bit more about it?
Sure, as you like. I come from a family of entrepreneurs, grandmas and grandpas, aunties and uncles, my mother and father working together, and so it was a tremendous model. The American dream is to kind of do your own thing and have your own business, and so that seed was planted inside of my head a very, very long time ago. And when I met my wife, I could see that we could partner as a loving couple, but we could also partner as business partners, and that was one of the. It was a helpful deciding factor in moving forward because it matched up with what I wanted. But to this issue of what we're talking about on the website that I posted on The Hungry Couple most recently, I want to quote an American. He used to write for the New York Times, and he's got a show on Vice now. His name is Anand Giridharadas. And I saw an interview with him the other day where he was talking about during this pandemic, we have the opportunity, or we have the freedom to change our minds. And that really resonated with me, and it impacted on me because I had already changed my mind previously, looking forward to the future with no consideration of stereotypes. The Chinese in general are forward-looking people. You look at the history of a 5,000-year history, and also plans for 100 years in the future. And so partnering with a Chinese woman from Hong Kong, I started thinking about really more so about the future. My Myers-Briggs type is the ENFP, and that is labeled as the visionary. So being in Malaysia and looking forward at these guys who had been in Malaysia for 30 years, they came when they were in their 30s and they were in their 60s, and they were kicking it because they had created the community and they had pushed forward for what it is that they wanted to do in an area they could forecast their lives into the future. And I looked around and saw that Spain is an option, but Portugal was really underneath a renaissance to a certain extent. A place that had been hiding in the shadow of whatever you want to call it for a long period of time, and now a resurgence and people starting to move forward. But if underneath the guise of understanding that we're allowed to give ourselves permission to change our minds, I looked at what would be the element of safety for the longest term. You see that 2 years back to back, that the Portugal has been considered a country of peace. Number 3 on the Internations or the Global Peace Index information, 2 years successively now. I also wrote about that on the thing because peace is important, and as the culture changes in response to climate change or climate disruption rather, you'll see if we see migration issues, if we see different things that are going on, I wanted to be in a place that would be safe with water, and water, right? Because all these other things you can deal with, but if the ground itself is not in a sustainable place and you don't have that element of safety, then that was problematic for me. And as I looked at Portugal, the south, there's a chance of desertification as time goes by. But you see a tremendous amount of aquifers up in the north, especially the Aveiro region, and you also see a tremendous amount of precipitation consistently. On the IPMA Punta Pete site, you'll see that consistently the water that's in the north is going along. So for me, if you're thinking the longer term, 30 to 40 years, how can I be a 70 or 80-year-old man comfortable living my life? Then I must be around a place that has water. So the north was okay for me. But then you have to get there. You have to find your path to get there. And for me, looking at the model of these gentlemen who had gone over to a place that was on the cusp or getting better as time goes by, they rode that wave for 30 years. And so that was my idea. Okay, so we see improving real estate around the entire country. Porto especially is a fantastic model because as the number 2 city, they don't face as much stress or struggle as Lisbon, the fate of the capital city. I think that, and also the decision-making process in the city of Porto is pretty solid. They seem to be progressive. Even just recently, they're opening up the weekends for pedestrian zones, and they're going to be improving the bicycling infrastructure around the city. So if the places are making the longer term, more sustainable decisions to consider for the longer term, they are considering their peoples. And that is an empowering and important part of what the government can do. They can say, okay, we're going to foster the conditions of this, but we're also going to step back and let the open market kind of do things that work. And when we see things that don't match, then we'll do that. We'll put some pressure and close that off a bit. Yeah. So I think what you see happening in Porto, especially, and of course around the rest of Portugal, but now being here in Porto, you see more businesses willing to take the risk. BMW is going to be coming in. They're trying to make this place into a tech hub. And so there will be employment for people as time goes by, and an increased and diversified type of employment. But at the end of the day, when I was in Malaysia, I saw that there were gaps. What those men were doing they were, for lack of a better term, they were exploiting the gaps. They found there was a hole, and they filled that gap, and then they were able to create their existence as a result of it. And I think that in a lot of circumstances, that's what entrepreneurship is, because you look and you see, oh, this is non-existent, this doesn't match, and I'll just fill that gap, and there it is. You have an opportunity to really make your name and succeed in, and not really so much making your name, but to provide service to those that need that. And if you've done it properly, then people have a chance to, you do end up creating a community around that and benefiting the community as time goes by. So with entrepreneurship, these people who decide to make a jump and come over to Portugal, what seems interesting to me is that the circumstances, the conditions are actually ripe for people to say, oh, I see that gap and this matches with my skill set. This is an authentic part of my value system. This is what represents who I want to be and how I want to be. So I'll grab that and I'll just go with it. And that can be in a number of different ways. But if you have a government that's fostering the conditions and the seeds are there and available, and you have new cultures that are coming in and mixing, and you see that it's the old days of the past are gone and the new days are here, but not yet fully here,
Yeah.
then you can walk with, with how do I say, with determination. You can say, this is the path and this is what I choose, and grab it and move forward. And I think that's one of the interesting things that exists right now within Portugal. I think the conditions are rather ripe, and it looks as though it will be a sustainable and safe place for at least the next 30 to 40 years, fingers crossed. And that's part of the reason why I made the decision to come over here together with my wife, of course. So
Amazing, amazing. And I love that framing of it, because, these are times of uncertainty. People are quite worried. A lot of people, you see on forums, don't you? Like, people think, I'm thinking of coming to Portugal. What sort of work can I get? And that's quite an old-fashioned way of looking at it, isn't it? And the responses tend to be, don't come if you haven't got a job, because you're going to be up against a 600 euro minimum wage here. You can't live on that if your rent is 400 euros, for example. And it looks like quite a grim picture on the face of it. But when you put it like that, in terms of seeing what you can bring to what opportunities you can see, and how you can apply your skills to that, that creates an altogether more positive picture, more of a meerkat than an ostrich, I think, in looking at the future. And I love your long-term view, Adam. Not many people are thinking 100 years ahead, are they, or their life as an old person?
And when I talk to people about the concept of climate disruption and that being a factor in my choice to choose Porto, they look at me with blank eyes. They're like, "Why would you even consider that?" And I think to myself, because okay, let's say migration starts to come up from the Sahara, and the things start to get really bad, and sea level rise. I mean, where we sit, we're at 86 meters above the sea, and the majority of the transportation network will not be affected by a 1 to 2 meter rise. So, I wanted to make sure that we could sit in a place of relative safety, that even if conditions start to shift, that they don't shift too drastically and they don't deeply impact and affect our lives. I want to be an 80-year-old man sitting in my garden, sipping a mint julep and relaxing, and and reading and having friends over, and all of that kind of stuff. Because again, if you plan properly, then you can prevent a multitude of issues aside from those that are unpreventable. As Donald Rumsfeld said back in the day, the unknown unknowns.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know. Absolutely. And there is,
not to quote Rumsfeld per se, but
sorry, yeah.
the concept itself exists.
Yes, we like the concept, if not the man. So yeah, and there is a good mom and pop tradition, of course. There are many great traditions in Portugal to plug into, aren't there? What I love about Portugal myself is that much of the you could call it the indigenous way of life isn't completely dead in the water or lost in the land, whichever metaphor you prefer, because Portugal hasn't been ruined by complete capitalistic neoliberalization, has it?
It's interesting, because when we were going around and doing some research in 2018, 2019, we would meet with these producers and providers and whatever. I would see that they were blending. They could not stay away from their tradition, and they would take the modern and the traditional and then fuse those together. And I feel really that that is an acceptance of your heritage, an acceptance of your past. And without an acceptance of your heritage and past, not a refutation per se, depends on how you want to go with that, but you cannot move into your future unless you really accept your past. And it seems as though the Portuguese are really generally holding on to that real sense of tradition. And I think it serves them well as they move into the future, because another point is that this resilience that you see from this seafaring people as time has gone by, when the new wave of opportunity came in 2011, a lot of people shifted over towards tourism and property development. Okay, obviously they were in vogue. It was the new scene, and so they did that. Now that may be threatened right now based upon this circumstance. So my very strong consideration is that, there's been whispers out there whether or not the European Commission or the European Council will be able to figure out a Green New Deal to move forward in order to help, like pull us out of this economic slump, as it were. I do think that the Green New Deal should be given credence. There should be something that they consider. And I saw that Portugal is considering hydrogen even more. But then again, fossil fuels are connected with that as well. But that's another story. I think that if the Portuguese have been resilient enough, these smart kids who are coming out of university, and they're like, okay, tourism is the way. I can do this, and I can push forward for an entrepreneurial kind of situation, or I can have 30 different properties and I can manage that. If there's a disincentive for something like that, and that time is either over or it's transitioned into a new kind of way, a new element of what the market is doing, then if the government says, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do wind, we're going to do solar, we're going to do hydrogen, whatever that they decide to do in terms of moving towards a Green New Deal within Portugal itself, and they provide incentives and training for people who are either in university or coming out of university. I know that they're working on digitization and helping even older people to understand better the digital market and how to do things. That's a part of the training that they're potentially putting forward. I think the finance minister or something like that, and Minister of State, Veda, I think he put that forward. So this is an opportunity, like Anand said, to give yourself permission to change your mind. And if the Portuguese government, which seems to be relatively leftist and progressive, if they say, we're going to double down on this and move in this direction, and we're going to bank on the resilience of our young people and the ability that they have not only within English, but also within scientific and design thinking, and also that connection to the land and the connection to the sea, they say, we're going to dig in all on this, and we'll let tourism be, and we'll understand that that's a portion of the GDP, but there may be a chance for us to do this, and this, all within the framework of something that's green and new, and fingers crossed, a deal for the Portuguese people. And with 10 million people solely, they're going to have a lot of opportunity to spread the wealth, as it were, and not. I hate that idea of the rising tide lifts all boats, because that's definitely a neoliberal idea. But it does make an element of sense if they're putting forward policies that are people first, but also banking on the resilience of those people. So I think it's exciting times. So with a little bit of vision, Portugal is uniquely poised to pull themselves out of something like this if they just don't hold fast to what the tradition dictates. If they're nimble, if they've got lean thinking, if they're agile, and they can move in a direction that says, all right, we see that this is no longer working anymore. This is something that's more sustainable for us. We're going to take it and we're going to reinforce all of that throughout the entire culture, and allow for people to use their skills, to use the things that they have in their toolkit, as it were, to carve it out for themselves.
Fantastic. I love the picture you paint, and hopefully the government will be on to you and give you a call, and you can deliver some consultancy to with some of these brilliant ideas. And yeah, I agree with you. I do like the phrase "all boats rise with the tide." And we've seen the folly of trickle down, or the myth of trickle down. But I suppose what we can do in Portugal is join the ends together, can't we? Is like, so yes, I don't think growth economics is going anywhere soon. That's a model we're all kind of brought up on and quite addicted to in a way. But with the tradition of resilience, as you've pointed out, and the sort of indigenous wisdom and old ways, if those, if you've got something coming down from the top and you've got something coming up from the bottom as well, and again, it's terrible language, isn't it? Because it's not really the bottom, but if let's say, you've got
distributed.
A pincer movement of the old and the new, let's call it that. Then you've got a really amazing purchase on the future. So a final question for you. I want to look at Zero, and do stay with me. The Zero Organization Association in Portugal. Feel free to go if you've got things to do, but you might want to check out Zero with me. But the final question I've got for you is to reframe that thing then of like, don't come to Portugal without a job, and you've got to have a trust fund, or you've got to have an online business or something like that. I know you won't want to give away your own IP, but what do you think are the growth areas, the opportunity areas that somebody coming to Portugal as an expat and an explorer might look at that aren't already very well subscribed or known about?
And that's actually the challenge, because that's the answer that an individual has to know for themselves, right? So for me, I can't answer this question for somebody else because I wouldn't presume to get into their skin. But in our circumstance, right, my wife being from Hong Kong, me being from America, I used to be an educator. I'm friendly. I can go in and I can talk to random people and I can make friends reasonably quickly. She's more detail oriented. So, and also she's connected to the Chinese market. So for me, I speak Spanish. So I told her, I said, my responsibility is to use my skill set. And so I went in and made friends with all kinds of different people, beer, craft beer brewers. I'm even knocked on the door of a monastery. We're exporting a unique product from a monastery here. And at the end of the day, it was about finding that match between what your skill set is and what the opportunities that are a part of the Portuguese situation right now.
Yeah.
I do think, and I have written about it briefly, don't quit your day job if you know what you're doing. If you have a digital kind of opportunity and you can live for a little bit less, then by all means do that. Or if you have a little bit of money on the side, then push forward, because at the end of the day, if you find that gap, nobody can guarantee nobody else is filling that. My wife has started to cook Chinese food specifically, and there's hardly any Chinese food of any quality at all here in Porto. So, they have an idea of what Chinese food, but when you taste this really nice stuff, you're like, you can't go back. So I tell Hong Kong friends, if you have something that matches, that's really good for you, put that forward, because there will be a market. The Korean market, the Japanese market, these are unknown and underappreciated elements that people just really don't have an understanding about throughout a large part of Europe, actually, because there's a focus on the European culture, rightly so. But for us, it was saying, okay, we have this understanding of Asian culture and we can put this forward. So again, I hate to kind of like bulk on that question, but each individual, you need to do a self-analysis of what it is that you really value for yourself and what you want in your life. For me, it was simple. I want to have good times. I want to have good food, good wine, good people, and I want to make sure that I'm in a place where there's water. Right. And for me, it was simple. And as a result of that, I can choose. Porto is a UNESCO World Heritage town. That factors very high on my list of things to do. So I said, okay, this is what I want. Boom. And this is a place that personifies exactly what I want, both now and also 30 to 40 years from now. And also the hedge. So if you have that little bit of money that you can hold off and protect yourself, then you have permission to hedge. I told my wife, and I looked at each other and we said, if this is no good in 5 to 10 years, if I see even the whiff, the stench of something bad going on here, we're out. Right. So, and I think that's one of the other things that people become afraid of, the unknown unknowns, right? So I think if you're living underneath an element of fear, either subconscious or conscious fear, then those are the things that are going to stop you from taking the risk. Don't ignore the practicalities of life and what is necessary for making those kinds of decisions, but don't also just discount your hopes, your dreams, the meditations you may be having, the dreams that you're experiencing, the conversations, what's it called, serendipitous kind of bits of life. That's not hippy dippy per se. It's just a form that we don't deeply and fully understand. So,
mate, we've got to get you back another time to talk more about this. But I think what I'm gleaning from what you're saying there is, like, take a look at the external opportunity, but have a good look within as well. And I think that's a really good thing for expats and explorers to do, because the journey is one of character building anyway, and it's really good to be aware of what's going on the inside as well as the outside. Adam, fantastic answer to the question. Are you going to stick around and have a look at Zero with me?
Sure, I'm flexible.
All right. Any questions for Adam? Put them in the comments. Morning from Veronica. Cooler today, thank goodness, as I'm outside painting. A homesteader taking care of their homestead by the sound of it. John thinks that Braga is a gem. I think this is sort of a universal appreciation for Braga, but there's a kind of north-south thing going on as well, isn't there? The focus does tend to be on Lisbon in the south and the Algarve, and then maybe Porto, and people are lucky to get to Braga and Bragança. 35 degrees back in the UK today. And look at this. In the Morrison supermarket, which is one of the big supermarkets over there, in case you don't know, Adam, they now stock Superboc. So Superboc are opening up. I think that's because they've been bought by a big brewing corporation though, and they're trying these brands all over the world, I suspect. And I think the same thing's happened to Sagres as well. Morning from a foggy Alvazra. Missed you yesterday as I had a morning out fishing. That's awesome, isn't it? That's another homesteading thing. That sort of lends itself to the mom and pop scene, doesn't it? Of the dad going out fishing. Come back along some lovely dirt road tracks and took in some breathtaking scenery. And this is what we've got in the Portuguese interior, central Portugal, just gem after gem after gem like that. Lovely. We feel very lucky to live here. Alvazra is well worth a look if you are exploring where to live in Portugal, near Tamar, of course. Good morning from Mafra, closer to Lisbon. Good morning to you, Asaf. And Peter wants to know if you caught anything. He didn't mention that, did he? Gary didn't say if he caught anything or not. I'm guessing he didn't, if he hasn't mentioned it. And in Castanera de Pera, 650 meters above sea level, should be fine there for a while too. And he may be giving us another legend today. Today's history story coming up also shows how big climate change has been here in Portugal, as the snowmen of Cointral could not exist nowadays due to the lack of snow. So it was snowy in central Portugal some time ago, in the mists of history. Let's have a look now very briefly then, because we've had a fantastic chat with Adam, but I did want to share this with you. This is Zero. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but I feel obliged to share them with you. The About Us section of Zero. I don't know if you're familiar with these people, but Zero was born at the end of 2015 from the common interest of about 100 people in achieving sustainable development in Portugal. Our DNA proves the ambition to intervene in Portuguese society through a proactive participation. Economy, will it be possible to build a more cohesive world, socially and economically, in full respect for the natural limits of the planet? Zero's intervention is based on solid ideas and a permanent dialogue with the key factors to achieve goals such as, and these are really brave and excellent goals, zero fossil fuels, zero pollution, zero waste of resources, zero destruction of ecosystems and biodiversity, and zero social and economic inequality. You can join up and be part of this for €5, I believe. I just want to share with you some interesting stuff about Portugal, just diving deeper into their website here. And this is in the soil and territory management of the various areas that they delve into and take care of. And just sharing with you 5 facts here, which I think are amazing, about soil and territory management. The percentage of artificial soil in Portugal is 5%. Of the total territory, corresponding to approximately 450,000 hectares. I don't entirely understand that. But anyway, about 80%, this is where it gets interesting to me, and I didn't realize this, about 80% of the Portuguese population resides on the 60-kilometer coastal strip between Porto and Setúbal, and half of the population of the Portuguese population lives in the metropolitan areas of Lisbon and Porto. And this is a trend that's obviously taken place over, since the Industrial Revolution, I guess, as people have moved to towns. And I'm sure Adam will have something to say about this, because I think we need to move people, not move people. That sounds like some terrible, Maoist intervention, but we should invite people to live in the interior and central again and explore that. Come back to that in a moment. Rail transport in Portugal has lost 44% of passengers in the last 25 years, with 770 kilometers of railways closed. I think that's a disaster, but it's not unusual in the economies around, the Western economies, as it were. Soil is a non-renewable natural resource in the short term. 1 centimeter of soil takes more than 100 years to form, and however, it can degrade in just a few hours. So look after the soil, folks. Really important. Check out that movie, The Need to Grow, all about soil. There may be hundreds of thousands of species per meter square of soil, of micro and macroorganisms, many of which are still unknown. So as well as outer space and under the sea, the very soil beneath your feet is an absolute mystery and delight for us to discover and to treasure, basically. Did you know that about the railways, Adam?
Absolutely not.
It's a bit of a shocker, that, isn't it? Because, that's a way of opening up the interior and central Portugal, is to get the railways working again.
It's one of the biggest issues here, I think, public transport. You go, I went to Vigo and Pontevedra for a little bit of the Camino de Santiago, just a quick section. Yeah. And just crossing the border from Camina just the train was significantly better in Spain. And I think that is one area of infrastructure that Portugal really will benefit from I think one of the biggest issues that people will probably oppose is the concept of eminent domain. They're like, I don't want you to take our land. We don't want you to ruin our land with these land grabs to create an improved infrastructure. But I don't know if that really matches up with what's practical for the long-term connectivity of the people. You want to make it more. Well, you want to make it easier for people to be able to get out to the middle of nowhere, as it were. So, because then you reduce the amount of petrochemicals that you need to use and fossil fuels in order to get people out there. So.
Absolutely, and a lot of the track systems are there. I'm right. People might resent the fact that it's become quiet and beautiful on the old tracks, and if they bring them back, obviously that changes things. But this is a negotiated future for all of us. Let's finish now. Then I'm hoping that some of you will join Zero, and we will look at them more. And I'm just reminded as well that you can travel to Vietnam from Portugal by rail. I saw a blog. That. Yeah, isn't that great? And maybe we should do it as a field trip one day.
It's probably not going to be very comfortable, though.
It takes 300 years to do as well. Anyway, the Neveiros, finally now, the Neveiros of Coentrão, a little history lesson for us. In the 17th and 19th centuries, during the winter, the people of the village of Coentrão in Castanheira de Pera climbed to the top of the Serra de Lousão at Santo Antonio de Neves to gather snow and store it in 7 covered stone wells, of which 3 can still be visited. The snow was then covered with paving stones to compact it and straw to insulate it, and was stored below ground level until summer. It was then transported by ox cart and barge to the royal court in Lisbon. Lisbon, so the royals could enjoy frozen sweets and cold drinks. This is what you can do if you're a king. Even though a lot of snow melted during travel, there was enough surplus from the court to be sold to the famous Café Martinho de Arcada and in other cafes in the capital. Imagine that on the menu today, snow. These days, the folk dance group in the village is called the Neveiros of Coentrão, in homage to that. Thank you, Peter. What a lovely history lesson to end with. And let's not tell Donald Trump about that, because he'll want snow delivered to the White House, I suspect, in much the same way, or Bezos, or any of these other billionaires of the world, in the battle of the billionaires that seems to be going on in front of our very eyes. But less of that and more of a thank you to Adam Freeman from DaHungryCouple. Check him out, DaHungryCouple.com. Fantastic talking to you today, Adam. Thanks for joining us.
My absolute pleasure.
You're welcome anytime. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Bye for now, sir. And off he goes back to breakfast in Porto, I suspect. And I'll say goodbye to you as well. Don't forget tonight, Thursday evening, of course, 8 o'clock with Expats Portugal. We're talking to Peter von Noonan about his whole process of helping people, actually, as a buyer's advocate. Every part of the process, renting or buying in Portugal, Peter's got it covered, and we have a Q&A. You'll need a ticket. It was limited to 50 so that everyone got a fair crack of the whip. Go to expatsportugal.com to find out more about that, and I'll be there hosting and co-hosting, joining in with the conversation and putting your questions to Peter this evening from 8 o'clock, and that will be on the expatsportugal.com website. More info from Peter there, look, if you need it, neveiros.coentrão.pt. I'll leave that on the screen there, and I will wish you a very good day today, and say to you, "Te logo, ate amanhã." And yeah, well, tomorrow we're talking about those pesky pests, flies, mosquitoes, and what to do about it, apart from enjoying, as some wag put it, the little window between when flies go to bed and before mosquitoes log on for their shift. There's that golden moment. But what else can we do in the meantime? I've got my bit of basil here, which I believe is a useful way of keeping mozzies and other pests away. So yeah, see you tomorrow. Take care and bye for now.